Raw dogs. Ah, woo! Welcome to the Don't Worry About the Government pre-show for all of our Patreon supporters. Happy New Year, guys. How y'all doing? They can't say anything, Joe.
Yeah,
They it's temporal, so like we're recording now, they're hearing it
yeah,
later. There's no call and response stuff.
we're at now.
We're
Yeah,
now, but they're later now,
there,
which
right.
would be our before.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
It's all
important.
very timey-wimey.
I'm excited to have you back on, Joe Drilling.
It's only been 8 years.
It's been eight. I don't. I have no idea why. Like it's just been this long. There is no good reason. Like you popped into my brain. Like I saw you talking about stuff. I don't know, like 2 or 3 months ago. I was like, oh yeah, Joe, I should have him on. And then I was like, all right, I gotta figure out when it's gonna make sense in terms of the election cycle. But I have no idea why prior to the end of 2020, between 2012 and 2020, you have not been on the show.
I actually tried to go back and just like listen to what we talked about before, but it's like offline. Like
Oh
the,
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
entry is still on your site. Like there's a
It,
picture
it,
of I think
it
Mean
it's
Gene and Bobby Heenan or something, and then
it's in the Disney vaults as we
yeah.
call them. Here, this is actually not a bad place to start. You see this stuff with Bean Dad, right?
I saw enough of it to be annoyed and just sort of tune it out a little
Like I
bit.
have no idea who this guy is or whatever, but
Yeah,
like most predictable story arc on Twitter and an online culture in the world, right? Some guy
right.
gets out there, hangs out a sign, and says, "I'm a weirdo." People start poking through his stuff, and then they discover he's a weirdo. Um,
Right.
and like in his case, utterly deserved. And I guess he was like in position to host something or get some like TV deal or
I
something.
think he's buddies with Ken Jennings, I heard, or something,
Okay,
and so
okay.
that was a bone of contention. But I mean, that stuff, it, like it's like one day on Twitter and it happens, and then it's over. And that day, I was not on Twitter until the very end of the day, and I just saw all these people talking about like, "Oh, Bean Dad," and I was like, "Huh?" And it's like I'm at my advanced age, even though I am terminally online, I am just way too exhausted to like do the research at that
Yeah.
point,
Oh
to
yeah.
like figure it out. I'm just like, okay, something happened on Twitter today and I missed it.
I don't like on a similar level, dude. I don't have the time to like. We're coming up on 500 episodes. Don't worry about the government. I'll flash it. I'll flash it. I'm proud. I'm proud of it.
uh,
Um, and dude, I don't like go back and listen to old episodes of this shit. That seems like the most navel gazing thing in the world. Like, remember that time I said this? Like, I don't have an appetite for that. And so my whole thought process is, if I don't have the appetite to maintain and understand what the hell's on my archives, maybe no one needs to really go on past.
so I find
I shutter them after every 100 episodes, but
I,
they're always available on request to anyone who wants them. Like, so if you wanted
yeah,
it, just tell me. I can give you the link.
I was gonna say I find that people do ask, like people are like, oh, like is What a Maneuver like archived somewhere? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, well, like, what if I wanted to, listen to it? I'm like, well, like all 100 and however many episodes of it. Like, I'm sorry, we weren't big enough for anybody to like put the whole thing on archive. And I'm sure between Eric and I, we probably have all of them, but like they're not all in the same place. And I don't know. I mean, it's a mess, And
I,
so I find it weird when people are like, oh, like, I want to go back and listen to that wrestling podcast you made like a decade ago. And I'm like, why?
Yours makes more sense in the sense that like it's an evergreen show that like if I decided that I wanted to go on a 90s wrestling kick at some point and go and check out What a Maneuver, and like I've been watching Same Name Different Game, your other show here,
Right.
which is active.
Right.
And like, I was like, well, Joe did this show. I like listening to Joe. I mean, because I think a lot of like on air brand is just like you get to like the person, like
Sure.
the politics are part of it, but I know there's a decent chunk of the audience who like likes me because I talk politics, but I'm the guitars guy too,
Right.
like, or
Right.
the guy with the cats, and like that stuff matters. So like, if I wanted to go on a 90s kick and relive the Monday Night Wars, What a Maneuver is bingeable in a way that like
Yeah,
no
I
one's
suppose.
ever like, Chris, man, I really wanted to go on this binge of like what life was like in 2015. Could you
Nah.
could you lift the paywall?
Somebody might in a number of years, I guess, but
And
right
I'll happily
now,
lift the paywall for that, or
yeah.
I can give them all the links. So I have them all. I have them all saved locally. They're actually all up on an S3 hub too. So like,
Hmm.
if anyone ever wants them or whatever, it's amazing. There's some things I'm not particularly organized about. This show and this product, it's somewhere down the line I got bit by the bug of archiving all this stuff in like a
Hmm.
logical manner so that I wouldn't go crazy, and I've been very good about that.
Yeah, I did. I'm the same way with the like I've talked to people who like other people who make stuff for YouTube, and like now we're in the era of like if you make videos, especially about classic games, like I think for most people to take you seriously or to like really sort of cultivate a following, it seems like you kind of need to have your stuff in HD at 60 frames per second, right? Especially like a lot of old game footage looks weird if it's not at 60 frames per second. Things that are flashing will just disappear or they'll seem solid because it's like if it's on the wrong frame, if the 30 frames is on the wrong frame, it's when it's blinking at 60 frames, it either looks solid or invisible and that kind of stuff. And but I've talked to a lot of people who are like, yeah, man, like I just delete all of the game footage and everything. Like I keep the final product and I get rid of everything else. And I'm like, oh no, man, I keep everything, which is why I have like a stack of hard drives, you know, full of game footage and stuff. So,
That's like one of the harder parts of being a content creator is like you think about so much of it's going to be on air, but most of like your life is editing, archiving stuff, posting stuff. I mean, even when I do a show like this, if I can achieve a 50-50 ratio where the edit and post portion of the don't worry about the government process is about the same length of time as the taping process, I feel like I have hit a home run because
yeah,
yeah.
well, there's 0% chance I could edit a video together in the time it takes to do the even the game. Well, it depends on the game, I guess. If I'm playing like
Sure.
a super long game, then I guess maybe it's probably about the same. But like generally, it's like I have like maybe on the high end like 3 hours of game footage, and then it takes an hour to 2 hours to shoot and record the voiceover, and then the rest, then it takes 20 to 40 hours to edit the thing together. So it's like, anyways, this
Yeah.
is not what we're here to do.
No, that's the pre-show banter. People like to hear things about these sorts of stuff. All right, let's bring it up for the main people here. There's no show slate or anything this time. I just like wanted to talk with Joe. Joe's up enough on the news. There's enough going on that I think we could fill it an hour fairly easily here.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. Absolutely.
I
Effortlessly.
yeah, I don't need to worry about that. So here we go.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got it. I got
Sorry,
it this time.
sorry,
No, it's all right.
sorry.
It's all right. It's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, hello again and welcome back to Don't Worry About the Government. My name is Chris Novembrino. Joining me on episode 495 in our March to 500 is my friend and the host of Same Name, Different Game, Joe Drilling, and a host of other podcasts too. You got a bunch of shows. What are your other shows, Joe?
I've done. Oh, well, we used to do my friend Eric and I used to do a wrestling podcast that you were on and composed the theme music for, called What a Maneuver. That was a week by week journey through the Monday Night Wars era of professional wrestling. And we, I guess, are technically on like an indefinite hiatus at this point. I don't think we've actually said that we've shuttered it for sure, but it got really hard like in the beginning when we started doing it, and people are like, oh, I wish you'd bring it back. But it's like when you start doing it and you're in 1996 and Raw and Nitro are both 1 hour long shows, and there's a Clash of Champions once every few weeks, and then there's a pay-per-view once a month or whatever. It's a lot easier to like fit that stuff in. And then when you get to the point where there's Raw is 2+ hours, Nitro is 3 hours, there's a pay-per-view every other week because both companies are running monthly pay-per-views and then some in some cases. And then if you want to even like look at what happened on SmackDown without even like watching all of it, and then Thunder, and then and it's just like it became so much work to just prep for an episode, you know, that it was like I have to put 5 hours aside every week to watch not current wrestling, which I also want to watch because I enjoy watching it, but I have to put 5 hours aside every week to watch wrestling from 1998. 8 hours if there's a pay-per-view that week, on top of making the time to talk about it and then edit it and then put it on the internet. And we just got to the point where we were just kind of like, we kind of burned out, and we never said like we're done or we're not doing it anymore, but we just kind of stopped right at like King of the Ring 98, I think is right about where we stopped, and never really picked it up again. So it's not really online anymore. We also we used to do a video game podcast called On the Stick. Now that's transitioned into a weekly live stream. We do that on Wednesday nights at if you just go to onthestick.com, it redirects to the live stream YouTube channel where we do that every Wednesday. We also do an action movie podcast called The Action Cast, which we used to do as a podcast. Now we've transitioned it to a monthly live stream because some of us had kids. Some of us have much more demanding careers than we did back when we were originally doing that. But I just got to the point, it was early in quarantine, that I was like, man, one, I miss talking about movies with people, like, and two, I feel like I looked for, you know, like I searched YouTube and I looked around for people who were like, there's 1,000,001 horror movie YouTube channels.
Sure.
There's like 0 people who are seriously looking at action films on YouTube. Not that we're serious. I mean, you know, Bryce went to film school. I dropped out of film school. You know, our friend Angela, who had not been on the show since we restarted, but was on for Gremlins, which we did for Christmas. She's got an MFA in film. She's a professor of film studies and film history. So we're semi-serious about it, but we're also talking about like the dumbest possible movies. And so I was like, the internet needs us, man. Nobody's talking about
Raw Deal by Arnold, or with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Nobody's talking about Raw Deal and how you should not bake and drink. You know,
he has a great line in there that someone must have fed him as a rib, where he goes, "They murdered, mutilated, and molested her." Only he says it like, "They murdered, mutilated, and molested her."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did an episode on Time Cop, and we can't figure out, like, it's the most watched thing I think on that whole YouTube. No, I did a special stream with my friend Smoke Monster about arcade, like building arcade machines at home and like using real arcade boards and stuff. And that I think is the highest, most viewed thing. But like right after that is the Time Cop Action Cast, but it's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of views more than any of the other episodes we've done since we started again, and no one can figure it out. We're like, why is everybody watching the Time Cop episode but none of the other ones? You know, like the Gremlins one has like 40 views right now, and the Time Cop one has like 2,000, and it's just like, what is there just this huge Time Cop community out there that we don't know about? That's the stuff that I do.
The internet's weird, man. And like you kind of kill yourself whenever you pop a sort of number, because you're like, all right, I did something right here. What did I do? I posted the theme song to Don't Worry on SoundCloud, and none of my other stuff does any amount of plays. I mean, like, there's stuff that's been up there, dude, like 7 years. I don't know that's broken 100 plays. The Don't Worry About the Government, I Am a Real American cover has like well over 5,000, 7,000 plays. Yeah. Last I checked. Yeah, no, it's just weird. And you're like, okay, what did I do?
Yeah, I've had a couple of videos like that where they hit big, and it's just like so the first one that hit really big was a couple of years ago. I did a video on Street Fighter Alpha, and it blew, like, at the time it blew up bigger than anything I'd ever done by like an order of magnitude. I was just like, what is going on? And I was like, did someone post about this on like the showryoucan.com forums, or did a news site pick this up for some reason? And I could not find anything. I checked out,
weird,
all the different like big fighting game like message board communities and stuff, and I couldn't find a new. Maybe someone just posted it on Reddit and nobody said anything, but like that's one of those things where like the Reddit retro gaming community specifically is super weird in that they will boot you if you self promote anything.
Sure.
But if somebody else posts it, then it's totally kosher. And it seems like that like is a big driver, even though I don't have a Reddit account. I hate Reddit. I despise it. But apparently it could have been that. So I don't know. And then there was one this year or last year in the middle of the year. I had an open month and I was like, you know what? I want to do something simple and just like easy on me before I do this big long series. I'm going to do a video on Legendary Wings, which is a Capcom shoot 'em up where you play as like Icarus, basically.
Okay.
And then there was an NES port, and that was it. There were no other console ports. It was just an arcade game, and it's not one of Capcom's big, fondly remembered. It's not Mega Man, Street Fighter, whatever.
Doesn't have a very memorable soundtrack or anything like that.
It's got a good soundtrack, but not one that you'd class with Mega Man 2 or anything like that. And it like from the second I posted it, it blew up massively. Like it might have been the fastest to 1,000 views I'd ever done. It was just like right away, everybody was watching this thing. And I was like, what is going on? And then like, not even a week later, it drove off a cliff. Like, and since the first week, it's gotten like 300 more views after it got several thousand. And I was like, I can't figure it out. I have no idea. I'm like, this game is not popular. It's not well regarded. I don't know what I did. I made a video on Tekken 3 like 2 months later that I was like, this is going to bring them right in. It's a still going franchise, popular in the fighting game community. It's a game that a lot of people remember with fondness. That video did a blip compared to what this Legendary Wings, like, I don't want to say it was a throwaway because I don't approach any of my videos as if they're throwaways, but
this was meant to be not quite a filler episode, but like a lighter lift episode.
Right.
Well, yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
It was like only 2 games. I don't have to compare 5 games or talk about the history of 5 games ported by 4 different teams and blah, 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 blah. Like it's just, it was meant to give me something of a break between that and what I knew was going to be an intensive run of like several videos. And so I was like, I'm just going to do something that's 2 games, easy breezy for me to produce, and like I'll have fun with it. It's a game that I like, but it's not going to do numbers because nobody gives a shit about Legendary Wings. Guess I was wrong.
So. Well, for a while, and then apparently people went back to not giving a shit.
Yeah, right. And then a week later, I struck while the iron was hot. People gave a shit about Legendary Wings again for that.
Yeah, right. The timing is everything in this business. Mm-hmm. Speaking of timing being everything in this business and striking when the iron is hot, Donald Trump is on the cusp of winning the 2020 election here in just a couple of days.
He has been on the tomorrow. He's going to win the 2020 election.
He's going to win the 2020 election.
But if he doesn't, he'll win it on January 20th.
What is the narrative about him winning it on the 20th?
I'm not totally sure yet. I just know that all of the weird QAnon people and stuff have just been like, well, the only dates that matter are the 6th and the 20th. So the goalposts have to move. They haven't moved yet because tomorrow hasn't happened yet. Right.
You have to buy into the kayfabe right up until the second it doesn't happen in order for this scam to get off the ground. Like there can't be airspace between where the kayfabe narrative about this and like reality butt together. You've got to keep them really, really tight.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because as I said on Twitter yesterday, the Republicans have worked themselves into a shoot, and they don't know, they can't tell kayfabe from a shoot anymore because they've worked themselves into a shoot. And it's not going to go well for them long term. I really don't see it going for them long term. I just don't.
I don't think the fever really breaks at this point until after 2024. Trump is going to have to run again.
Or after Trump eats his 7,000th greasy cheeseburger and has a massive grabber and croaks. Of course, then they'll immediately start that he was killed by the deep state or whatever, even though like he's clearly a super unhealthy. Like I thought for a minute he was going to go when he got COVID, when they rushed him to Walter Reed. I was like, oh, he's going to go.
It
you
was
know.
certainly an open possibility to me, and it's pretty clear that they pumped him with some serious fucking drugs during that
Oh,
time. Like, yeah,
absolutely. Right, and
him
that's
at those
another.
rallies like this and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
juxtapose him at those rallies 2 months ago to him doing anything in Georgia, and you could say his heart's not into it, but he's also moving like at 80% speed
Yeah.
compared to where he was in October,
Right.
flying around doing the elliptical. That was his big
Right.
move. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. His weird, and then yeah, it's weird. But
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that's frustrating about that too, and I saw some columns about this in various places, that like it's super frustrating that if your grandfather got COVID through some, you know what I mean? Like if okay, I'll use a concrete example because I can speak to my own situation. If my grandmother, who's in her 80s, got COVID, she's been very careful. She has barely left her house in almost a year, except to go on walks and to kind of keep herself in shape. But she doesn't like go places and do stuff. And my mom and her sisters barely see. I mean, they go see her, but they mask up and they do all the stuff and whatever. If she somehow got COVID, the FDA and mostly the FDA or the doctors following those protocols would not let her have access to the drugs that we know that Trump got, experimental drugs that are not available to us regular civilians. Even if she was on death's doorway and said, you know what, if the treatment kills me, the thing is going to kill me anyways, so give me the treatment, they would still say no. But Trump gets all the experimental, stuff because, and that is, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to save the president's life, whoever the president is, right? I don't
No, no,
like
but it's
Donald Trump, but what I'm
illustrative of
saying
a
is,
class thing.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, no, I'm with you. Like, look, operationally speaking, whoever is the president, yes, they should be near the top of the queue, if not at the top of the queue, for making sure that they're getting the best treatment and all. Like, I get all of that, but like, it's the same kind of privileged thing that like Chris Christie gets the best treatment
Right,
and Rudy Giuliani gets the best treatment and
right.
like all these top
Well, Rudy
1% people.
Giuliani can't even get a bottle of Gas X. What are you talking about?
Like,
But yeah, that's the thing I'm saying, that if the treatment was ready to go, if they had it, and I was like, I if I got it and I'm laying on my deathbed here in Nashville where it's bright red because things are real bad in Tennessee. I don't know if you watch the heat maps, Tennessee is one of the reddest states right now. And
you
if
in
I
New
was,
Jersey.
yeah, if I was lying on my deathbed and I said, pump me full of whatever you have, you know what I mean? I'm knocking on death's door. I'm either gonna, they would say no, even if they had it available. And that's the thing that's frustrating, is that the rules get to not apply to him to save his life, but not another person whose life you could
And
save,
it's been like that with
even though
fucking
they're gonna die
everything.
anyways.
Like, I think that's the other underlying issue with watching Trump get it. I have no problem with the conceptual idea, as you were saying, of the president getting access to these treatments. I have a huge problem watching Donald John Trump, who acts like the rules don't apply to him, that he is special, that he can bend the rules. Like, we're talking about the election and everything. Like, what's he trying to do right now? Bend the rules some more. Like when he was wanting, going back 4 years, when he was wanting about the Iowa caucuses and Ted Cruz winning that. He was trying to bend the rules to get those primaries to be what he wanted them to be. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
guy who has been pitching a fit about the rules and trying to make the rules work to his advantage at all times. He is in classic wrestling understanding. He's a total heel. Like there's
Yeah.
nearly nothing babyface about this guy.
Oh, there's nothing. There is zero babyface about this
It,
guy. I
yeah.
mean, he is, and some people are like, oh, well, he knows Vince McMahon, and therefore blah blah blah. But like wrestling, that whole thing comes from the hucksters and con men of Carnival. The history of professional wrestling was laid in the carnivals. That's where it came from. That's why we wrestling people who are in wrestling. I guess I'm not in wrestling anymore, but people who have been in wrestling like still use carny terms. Mark is a carny term. Work is a carny term. Those aren't just wrestling terms. They've become wrestling terms because carnivals are not really a thing anymore. And not in the same way that they were back then. But when you talk about, working the marks, That's carny speak. They would literally, they would put, if they saw somebody who they thought was gullible and had money, one of the carnies would put a chalk mark on their shoulder. They were literally marked so that you knew who you could get money off of. And it's not like because Trump knows Vince McMahon, he plays
He
this
understands
thing,
wrestling
right?
psychology on some deep level.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't, for sure. If you asked him to plot out a wrestling match, he couldn't do it, for sure. But he understands hucksterism.
He understands A versus B. Like the example I always go back to is the Rosie O'Donnell wars from
Right.
like the aughts. Like
Right.
he understands that, and insofar as those Rosie O'Donnell wars can be understood through a pro wrestling matrix, that is Donald Trump's understanding of pro wrestling. But like a narrative I really hate that gets tossed out all the time is just.
I
This
mean,
idea that-
they had Ace Steel play Donald Trump and wrestle a Rosie O'Donnell impersonator.
Yeah, that's right.
On Monday Night Raw when that was happening.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I might have actually watched that episode with you. I don't remember. It's a yeah. But with Trump, it's not any deeper than that. Like the one thing I really don't like is the smart Trump narratives, because if this guy was smart, he would have gotten the $2,000 check passed before the election and won the election. Like if he was smart, he wouldn't be having to do all this election chicanery right now.
Well, I mean, if he was smart, he wouldn't step in it every single time that I mean, it's not hard for someone in that position of power to get away with shit. People get away with shit all the time. Look at all the shit that Dick Cheney got away with. Look at all the shit that George Bush got away with. Look at all the shit that Richard Nixon got away with until he didn't, right? It's not hard for a reasonably competent person to, but the thing with Trump is that he's just so, it seems, I guess, that he's so used to just, I mean, he's a spoiled little rich boy, and he has gotten his way his whole life, and he's bullied people who can't afford to fight lawsuits. And he's, when you just don't pay someone to do work for you and then they sue you and you've got a bunch of high paid lawyers and they don't, you're just going to outspend them until they just give up and say it's not worth it. And so he's just used to getting his way. And then he runs up against, and of course, the Republican Party, spineless whelps that they've become, like a lot of them have still not instilled any, you know what I mean? There's been like the fact that Ted Cruz was, as you said, accused of rigging the Iowa caucus, which, first of all, the Iowa caucus is so fucking Byzantine. There's no way to rig it because nobody understands the rules anyways. It's like, stand in this corner. Okay, now somebody's going to have to stop standing in one of the corners so we can whittle this down.
If you were going to rig, there'd be a shitload of witnesses.
Right.
I mean, they're always just silly claims because if you actually think about it, like, because it's all like groups of people standing, you'd have witnesses all over the place.
Right. And so it's like, but the fact that Cruz, after Trump insulted his wife, insulted his father, all this stuff, and then, and Cruz has just...
He phone banks for Trump in that famous picture.
Yeah, the picture is great. Yeah, and now he's completely. Oh, Mr. President, I'll argue before the Supreme Court for you.
It would be such an honor, sir. That's the thing that's crazy. It's not just going along with the kayfabe. Cruz is like embracing it in a way that's one step further than it's actually required to.
Right, but again, I don't. Yeah. It's not. He's worked himself into his shoot. Like that stink will never come off of him. And maybe the people in Texas who vote straight ticket Republican don't give a shit. Or maybe they do. And maybe on the next time he gets primaried, so a couple things could happen. That's what hurt him
against Beto. I mean, like you compare Cornyn to Cruz. Yes, Hager's a weaker candidate than O'Rourke, but like, no, Ted Cruz's his individual cruisiness, it bothers people. Yeah, it does.
Well, it's clear that he has no scruples, right? He doesn't. It's about who was it? Now I can't remember. I think it was Romney, right? Who was talking about how it can serve some of these people's individual aspirations, but long term it's not. And even in the immediate, I don't really know that it's going to do that. He's either one of two things is going to happen to Ted Cruz. I predict, and maybe you can hold me to this later and I might sound like an idiot, but he's going to get primaried by either someone who did not huff Trump's farts for 4 straight years, and volunteer to represent him at the Supreme Court. Is Ted Cruz even still licensed to practice law? I guess once you're in the Supreme Court bar,
I'm very confused. Yeah,
stay there.
Yeah.
But or once this is all over, which is tomorrow / 2 weeks from tomorrow, and Trump is down the turnpikes to some extent, and Cruz has said something that's even mildly critical of Trump, some total fucking QAnon whack job is gonna challenge him, primary him, and either win or just start throwing out the same kind of Trumpian, it was rigged. I won the primary. Cruz didn't actually win the primary. I won the primary, just like when Trump got screwed over by the Democrats, and just like when Cruz tried to screw over Trump in Iowa in 2016, and then that will have some kind of weird knock-on effect. Either it'll split the ticket because the nut job will just run anyways as an independent, and all the QAnon weirdos and super Trumpy people, and if Trump, God forbid, Trump would endorse the other guy, right? And then a Democrat would win because the vote would be split between the weirdo and the guy who challenges Cruz, and the Democrat, or I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of scenario that I see. It's the Republicans are, and this is not unique to Republicans necessarily, right? Like, there is a nasty tendency in politics for people to not be able to see 5 feet in front of them, and it comes back and bites them in the ass. I remember in I guess it was 2012, when Senate Democrats were like, we're going to get rid of the cloture filibuster for federal judge appointments. I was like, that's a mistake. You're going to regret doing that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because once they got, I mean, here's the tricky thing with that is, like, I'm with you. It's bad, and I think actually with judges in specific, you want to have 60 votes as a threshold.
Yes,
but yeah,
absolutely.
I while I'm in favor of getting rid of the filibuster on a number of things, on the judiciary, absolutely not. Like, the 60 vote, that threshold's actually really, really useful.
Yeah, and now. And people are like, well, let Obama put all these judges. And I was like, do you think that a Republican is not going to do that, but maybe even worse? And Trump, the people talk about the Supreme Court, and I am sympathetic to that. The makeup of the Supreme Court is probably not in a place that we want it to be. I mean, people who are like-minded to myself and to you, although you and I are not exactly like-minded, I don't think, on a lot of things. But like, I don't love the makeup of the Supreme Court right now. But the Supreme Court hears 60 to 80 cases a year. Trump has appointed hundreds of federal judges in lifetime positions, and those judges hear thousands of cases that end up making up binding precedent because they never get to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court only takes 60 cases a year. That's way more damaging. And that goes back. And then people are like, well, the Republicans would have just done it anyways. And it's like, maybe. We don't know that. We do know that the Democrats actually did do it. They actually did get rid of the cloture filibuster for the appointments of federal judges because they wanted to ram through a bunch of Obama's appointees, which I understand that urge.
They were getting jammed up by McConnell. I mean, I'll say this, like, McConnell has, in a way that I am very envious of, because it is simply not a point of focus for either Bidenists or like Sanders-nistas, people who are sympathetic to Bernie. Like, Mitch McConnell has been really laser focused on the court and the judiciary as a point of focus, of a point of, in his case, judicial activism, and they had a real plan that over the last decade they really executed. They part of that plan was, Obama had a bunch of picks. Let's stop him and thwart him from getting a lot of those picks in, which ultimately kind of forced Obama's hand on getting rid of the filibuster, and then that allowed McConnell to roll into his second phase. Right. When the part of the problem, to your point, is the Democrats, I think, really operated deep, I mean, all the way through 2016, really, under the belief that there was really no way for them to lose the 2016 election.
Right. Well, that was the problem, right?
That
As
wasn't
we
for
know,
no. They I mean, much
know.
in the same way that I think RBG. I'm very unpleased by the court, and to your point about the lower courts, another problem is now it's going to be harder to get cert on cases that people of my political persuasion, at bare minimum, would want to see heard on the Supreme Court, because like liberal justices, so the more liberal justices, aren't going to want to vote in favor of hearing them on the court because they're going to think they're going to get shot down.
Right.
So more things are going to die in those circuit courts, and more precedent is going to be made in those circuit courts, which is also going to be bad.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, for sure. And so here's what I'll say, pending what happens tonight, because as we're recording this, the runoff in Georgia is being counted as we're talking about this, and I'm not super interested in watching those tallies come in super closely.
Every minute of this show, there will be an update. Actually, I will give us one quick update here as we're going. So we got 79% of the effective vote total here. And Purdue and Loeffler currently lead by 2% and 1.26%. I'm really upset. I hope Loeffler does not win, because there's no one less deserving to be a senator in the Senate than Kelly Loeffler. And I'm including Ted Cruz in that sentence.
Yeah,
I considered him.
Yeah, she's awful. So pending that, I mean, we don't know. I don't know what the vote counting procedure is on mail-ins in Georgia. I don't remember. I know a lot of it was mail-in.
Run with it like if the R's win.
If the R's win, start getting ready for the midterms, I guess. If the D's win, though, Breyer should retire immediately.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
The D's win.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And Ginsburg should have retired in 2013.
Yep. And
she'd already had cancer once.
Obama was trying to force her hand to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he had the meetings. She did not want it. She didn't want to do it because she thought she was going to be able to handle a few more years. I mean, and if anything, when Merrick Garland got jammed, she should have retired too, to really force the hand of McConnell and Obama to actually do something to get these nominations onto the court.
I don't see that. I don't see McConnell budging on that. Honestly, he's such a scumbag. He's so scrupulous. I don't see him. He wouldn't. Doesn't matter. That's the biggest problems that are tied together that we face, I think, as a nation are tribalism, which I think is a function of problems we have with media literacy. And I think those are the two big things that we as a nation need to overcome. And when we talk about tribalism, I'm talking about like the people in Kentucky are until there's some sort of sea change, some sort of big shakeup, they're just going to keep voting Republican no matter who it is. They do not give a shit. More than 50% of the people who vote in Kentucky do not give a shit as long as the R is next to their name.
The magic R.
That's it. That's so Mitch McConnell can do literally whatever the fuck he wants, because even though the Democrats for some reason decided they thought he had a chance to lose, that was a big fat fucking waste of money. That money should have been spent in other closer races in purple states, not in fucking Kentucky.
No, they need to start laying the legwork in Texas. Yeah, it's a multi-electoral cycle strategy, but like you look at the way this electoral college map played out, could have easily went the other way for the Democrats, and there's no guarantee that they're going to get a hold based on this electoral college map. This is the biggest or the narrowest landslide I've ever seen in my life.
Right. Well, it ain't a landslide, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it just isn't. But
in a popular vote sense, yes, but in an electoral college map sense, no. Yeah.
Maps, it was the same. I mean, Trump said it was a landslide. I get that some people are like, well, Trump said it was a landslide in 2016, so I guess he lost by a landslide. And like, that's fine to dunk on Trump, but like, let's be real, this was not a landslide. But it merits mentioning that, again, as talking about the situation in Georgia, like a bunch of states that hadn't gone for a Democrat in since before you and I could legally vote, went for a Democrat. That's how repugnant Trump was. That's how motivated it was. And I remember my parents asking me, I was in Wisconsin to pick up my cats and bring them down to Tennessee in September.
Hey, that's a noble quest. I love my cats.
Yeah. They'd been
drive across the country for their cats.
Yeah, they'd been with my parents for a few years. When we lived in DC, we had a tiny apartment, and the rules were you can only have so many animals and whatever. And now that we live in Tennessee, I went and got the cats. And my mom was like, not like I don't want to know like who you want to win necessarily, but like who do you think is going to win the election? And I was like, Joe Biden. And she's like, you think so? She's like, I don't know. I think Trump's going to win. And I was like, I think it's going to be Biden, but I think a big part of it is going to be turnout. If the turnout is high, Biden will win. And the turnout was high, and Biden won, and he won in a bunch of places that people didn't, and I didn't think he would win. Even though I thought he would win the election, I didn't have Georgia and Arizona on my bingo card, like
my electoral college map ended up being closer, but that it was because I was conservative with I wasn't buying into all the polls, and I tended to bias towards historicity. The one I got wrong was Georgia. I did not see Biden winning Georgia.
Yeah, same. But I think getting back to McConnell and what a scumbag he is, he wouldn't have got. So also, I have to say this for posterity, because there's always I don't like to get into arguments on Twitter, so sometimes I bite my tongue on things. But
I know that struggle.
I need to voice this while I'm here in a face-to-face ish realm with you on Zoom. Merrick Garland fucking sucks, and I'm glad he's not a Supreme Court justice. I get that it was chicanery by the Republicans and it was shitty, and it's that guy, he was a conservative pick by Obama because he wanted to get him past the Republicans. That's why he picked him. He fucking sucks. You know who Merrick Garland really loves based on his judicial record?
Who?
Cops. He loves cops.
Oh, that's right. He's a soft on guns, soft on cops thing.
He's like a blue dog Democrat, type. Cop. Probably not. He wouldn't say he backs the blue or anything like that, but in effect, with his rulings, he does. He's a Breyer type statist. Whatever, if the state does it, it's probably fine. That is Merrick Garland's judicial theory, based on his rulings in federal court, and he fucking sucks. And for my part, of the three that Trump did appoint, I actually think the one who stole Merrick Garland's seat.
I know, right? Gorsuch is the least objectionable of the three. His arrival, well, prior to Amy Coney Barrett, his arrival is the most improper, but Neil Gorsuch, I think, is well within the bounds of normal. It's Brett Kavanaugh, who definitely lied under oath numerous times throughout his confirmation hearing, and I'm pretty sure he raped Christine Blasey Ford. I feel pretty confident on that one. And then Amy Coney Barrett, who they hot-shotted through. And her resume, I would talk about her resume the same way you have, Joe, about Merrick Garland, except she didn't have any.
She doesn't have one.
She didn't have one. And they had to make a special carve-out to even make her a federal judge back in 2017.
And she has talked at great length about the extent to which her faith, and I'm not against people of faith are welcome to have that faith, but when you're a jurist, your first responsibility must be to the law, and regardless of what your faith says about that, particularly in a country where we have a separation of church and state, you can't make decisions based on what you would like to be the case because you're a person of faith. You need to make decisions based on what the law is. And the way she has talked about that makes me deeply uncomfortable. But Neil Gorsuch is very clearly, I think, trying to style himself after Anthony Kennedy. And I'm, mostly fine with that.
He's way less bad than I thought he was going to be. And he's a much more he's interesting in a way that Brett Kavanaugh is a fundamentally uninteresting human being. He was a partisan hack who went after Clinton in the 90s.
Right.
Everything in terms of his jurisprudence is standard run-of-the-mill Republican or fishing expedition stuff to try to justify stuff. He is everything you said about Merrick Garland. Brett Kavanaugh loves cops as much as Merrick Garland, if not more.
Oh yeah, probably more.
Probably more. Right? Yeah. It's like there's nothing interesting about Schlitzmalt Kavanaugh. And like when it comes to Amy Coney Barrett, she's also really uninteresting to me because she's like the classic person who says, "Oh, my deep belief in metaphysics absolutely does not color my understanding of reality," and we all know that it's wrong because like everyone's belief in metaphysics colors their understanding of reality.
Yeah, I think the thing with Gorsuch that's interesting, of course, is like so I found this funny. My wife is a lawyer. She's a constitutional lawyer. She has written briefs at the Supreme Court level to the Supreme Court. I'm not going to talk about where she works or where she has worked. I will just say this: her name has been on Supreme Court briefs from large organizations that you've definitely heard the name of. And that's not partially because I don't want to put her on blast, and partially just because I don't want to color the tenor of the conversation by talking about she worked at these places. And,
it's
and
the
like
ACL, you people. That's who it is.
Could be.
It's
not. It's not the ACLU.
I should have made a joke. I was like, oh shit, I might have just played Battleship there.
It's not. No, you did not sink the Battleship. It's not the ACLU. But you know, her boss currently, when we were talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 case that just happened now 2 terms ago, I guess, earlier this year, last year. Jeez. I'm going to do that a lot. I'm going to say earlier this year when in fact what I mean is like more than 6 days ago.
I believe this 2-year time period we're currently in is just going to be summed into 1 year at some point. We'll have a constitutional amendment on it.
Yeah, right. But she her boss was like, well, "What do you think's going to happen with that case?" And she was like they're going to uphold the right of, you know, and she's like, not only will I say, and I think this is so funny because her boss didn't believe her, thought she was full of shit. She was like, not only will Gorsuch side with the liberals, he'll write the opinion. And her boss was like, get the fuck out of here or whatever. And then the day it came out, Gorsuch sided with the liberals and wrote the opinion. And she was like, that falls directly in line with his historical jurisprudence. That is not a surprising. A lot of people were surprised by that, but I also find that people who are not married to a constitutional attorney do not follow the Supreme Court as closely. You know, understandably.
Think, the flip of it is like there is a lot of stuff kind of on my side where we see, like, for example, Gorsuch in the Ice Road trucker case, which in my opinion his jurisprudence is just fucking wrong on. Like it's a ghoulish ruling that he wrote out there. But conservatives or like business Republicans, the Federalist Society, look at that and go, okay, that's great. And that's enough for them to go like, check, we'll run with this guy. And they don't do their additional homework on some other parts of that person's jurisprudence that they might not actually be in favor of.
I mean, I identify as, I guess since we're, it's a politics podcast, so I should probably let people know where I stand to some degree. If they didn't listen to the show 8 years ago, I tend to,
There's a handful who did.
I have historically identified as a libertarian, but it's hard now. Like recently,
the word's taken on a different meaning.
It has. And there's a guy by the name of Adam Bates who he used to work at the Cato Institute in the Center for Constitutional Law, and now he does refugee specific law, and I can't remember the name of the nonprofit he works for now. But he wrote a tweet a few months ago that I retweeted it, that it was just like, we need a party that's essentially, I'm a libertarian, but no, not like those libertarians you see on the internet.
No, it's like the Brink Lingseys and the Will Wilkinsons and like a number of people who like Radley Balco and stuff. Like Radley Balco has been run out of the libertarian movement. It's not because he stopped being a libertarian. It's that like libertarianism got hijacked by
fascists.
Yeah, basically. I mean, like the way watching them over the last 4 years, I know this is not you in the slice, but like watching them just sort of go like, there's nothing wrong with the way Trump's behaving when it comes to his approach and disposition towards the Constitution. over the last 4 years.
But that's the idea. The idea that anyone who would claim to stand for what I understand libertarianism to be, and say that Donald Trump is good, actually, is, I mean, I just don't. Those things are not. They doesn't work. Is you are just pounding that square peg into that round hole.
Muslim ban is not about free flow
Muslim
of people. Yeah,
I mean, you can just go down the tariffs, Muslim ban, undoing NAFTA, which and then people will be like, we don't need a treaty for free trade, and it's like, okay, well, maybe we don't need one, but like we had one and it worked, so like, and then of course.
Have indefinite detention, family separation.
Family separation. Like you said, the Muslim ban, his hostility to the First Amendment, his hostility to Section 230,
torture,
his open embrace of torture.
He talks about it favorably. It was trying to bring it back, and was mad
the death penalty. I need to talk about this for just a second. I know it's a sidetrack.
No.
Can we talk about Trump's absolute fucking bloodthirst? That is like, the United States had not executed a federal prisoner who was on death row since, I want to say, like the Clinton administration, or maybe even like the Bush 1 administration. And all of a sudden Trump was just like, nah, we're fucking killing them all, man.
Get him. No, like, I mean, the bloodlust at the end of this.
Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
It's I mean, one of my frustrations with my own side as I watched like either the Bidenists or the Sanders people, like the Jimmy Dore left, is they obsess over Medicare for all right now in this quixotic quest to get like a Medicare for all vote to get done on the House floor so that we can symbolically show where we stand. This worked really great with the Obamacare repeal votes, as we all remember too, right? Like you're talking about historical examples. Like I know where this goes. But while a lot of psychic energy has been dumped into that, Trump has been running an industrial execution factory in the final days of his administration. And like, it's not because Trump has been doing so much shit for so long, it's no longer even really registering to people how absolutely ghoulish this program is, and the impulses that underpin it.
Yeah, and you talk about Radley Balco, his wife Liliana Seguro writes for The Intercept. She runs that. She's a great Twitter follow. It can be a little grim sometimes, but she's a great Twitter follow, and she's been going to the executions and going and talking about this and writing about it and how frankly fucking ghoulish it is that he's just trying. The Trump administration is trying to kill as many federal prisoners as they can before January 20th. And it is absolutely repulsive. And someone that my wife went to law school with, we went out to brunch, is myself, my wife, and him and his fiance or wife at one point when we lived in DC. And he crystallized it for me so perfectly in a way that I hadn't myself been able to articulate in my feelings about the death penalty. But we were sitting there eating brunch. We're talking about all this different stuff and libertarianism and how it's going the wrong way in a lot of ways and this kind of thing. And we were talking about the death penalty, and he was like, it is unethical and immoral to execute a prisoner, like a person who is not an active threat or combatant. It is immoral to kill that person because that person is not, like, they are not an active threat to anyone. Therefore, there is no reason to execute them. And it's
an interesting position. Yeah.
Like, you just don't, like, in war, you don't allow that, right? Like, you can't kill a POW, right? Like, that's a war crime. To kill a prisoner of war is a war crime. But when it's done domestically, then it's okay. That's fine to do that. Like, and it's it does not sit well with me at all. That's one thing in particular. Like you said, I feel like there are so many shitty things about Trump, but like, these are actual human lives that are being lost.
Well, this is why I've been such a red line about the coronavirus, dude. It is like Trump just over the last, yes, the first 3 years were corrupt. Yes, like he, cheated during the 2016 election, doing illegal usage of campaign finance funds to pay off Stormy Daniels, and probably if he hadn't been able to pull that off with the help of Michael Cohen, wouldn't have won. Yes, 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 and. But the last 12 months of his administration put up this prodigious body count and an absolute indifference to killing American citizens that, like, yes, there's always been a blasé nature about killing citizens of the world from the United States government.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah,
well, he's
yeah,
been good at that too.
And
I mean,
he's also like, he doesn't get enough credit.
Let's not forget the coalition bomb that blew up a school bus in Yemen 3 years ago.
And the fact that the drone program, for the limited amount of chatters, actually killed more people than Obama's drone program.
And Obama had twice as long to do it in. And of course, I do always have to stick in. Don't forget, Obama killed even more people than Bush did with the drone program.
Well, that's also because that was a transition away from Bush's. But I get what you're saying.
Hang on. I'm
Okay,
gonna hold your feet to the fire a little bit here.
No, I'm with you.
Don't defend the Obama administration's extinguishing of human life.
I'm not defending it,
murder
Joe.
robots.
Joe, when was drone technology viable from a military standpoint? In a serious way, in terms of military operationalization? Was it during the first half of the aughts or in the second half of the aughts?
It was in this, but I'm just saying Trump got there in 4 years, so Bush could have if he really wanted to.
But Bush was really into tanks and planes. I'm just saying, like, you're right.
Here's the big thing with me about Obama is that on that point, and I don't want to rehash the Obama administration, but the thing that really bugs me is that his administration is the one that instituted the double tap with the drones.
Sure.
That's unconscionable, honestly, frankly, in my opinion. And that's the thing that this will be the last thing I say about Obama. I promise.
You can bash him all if you fucking want. I don't care that much. Yeah.
No, I'm not. I just don't. It's not current, so it's not germane, in my view. But people talk about, like, I saw another meme the other day of like, the Obama remember when we had Obama as a president and the only scandal was that he wore a tan suit and like saluted with a latte in his hand? I'm like,
you forget about the Mavi Marmara.
Yeah, I'm like, I remember him blowing up a wedding with a murder robot, and I remember him killing an American citizen on foreign soil with a murder robot, and I remember
killing children, the son of Anwar al-Awlaki, and killing him, and then Robert Gibbs saying,
that's what I'm talking
he
about.
should have had a better father.
Right.
Yeah.
And then continuing the Bush era rendition program for like.
And coming up with 1,000 reasons not to get rid of Guantanamo Bay.
Right. Yes, promising he would close Gitmo and then just not do it. Like, Gitmo's still there. It's still open. And people want to like retroactively saint him. And I get it. Like, I would take 8 more years of Obama over the 4 years of Trump that we got in a fucking heartbeat. But that does not suddenly make him the goodest dude that ever was president.
No. All these people have body counts, right? And it's not. You don't have to sit there and go, Obama's a great man, to recognize that Trump's the greater of two evils.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Like when you say so and so is the lesser of two evils, the point I always try to hit home is this is not a value statement that's saying person A that I'm saying is the lesser of two evils is good. This is just saying that there are 2 bad choices and one is worse.
Right, but it's the thing. Here's the thing. It's a game of inches, right? Like, the reason that I was pulling for Biden, the reason that I'm glad Biden won, and I feel like people lose sight of this so much, and I see a lot of it on, I follow enough people on left Twitter to see a lot of the skirmishes that happen over there. And it's similar to the stuff that happens on Libertarian Twitter to some extent. There's a lot of like
politics,
purity,
wish casting,
fantasy, but purity testing, right? In a way of well, if you support Biden, then things are just gonna like, he's not that great actually. And it's like, yo, man, progress does not happen overnight. Rome was not built in a day. This is a game of inches. And the less shitty person who is coming out and talking about, even if it's not the police reform that we want, and I've been beating that drum for a very long time on police reform, like, it's not the police reform we want, which what I want is the abolition of all municipal police forces as we understand them today.
I'm a de-SWATification of America
So,
guy.
yeah, right. So,
It's state-only SWAT forces. Yeah.
and it's like, this guy is talked at least about wanting to do that. And there's a whole bunch of people I know who like, you got to give Trump credit for the First Step Act. And I'm like, why do I have to give Trump credit for the First Step Act? I'm like, the
Anyone
only
would have
reason he
passed
signed it is because it was passed by a massive bipartisan majority that it was unvetoed. I mean, he could have vetoed it and they would have just overridden his veto like they just did. I couldn't believe that was the first veto they'd overridden, by the way, just a week ago with the
defense
bill.
Yeah, it's fitting that it's of course the Defense Act.
Of course it is. He loves the military, but he wouldn't sign the thing to continue funding them.
And what's funny is that will never hurt him in the kayfabe. You'll never be able to point to that as a point of hypocrisy. They'll be like, well, he was upset about Section 230.
Right, which has nothing to do with military funding whatsoever.
It doesn't matter that argument.
Right. Did you see that Parler just admitted that 230 is good? Actually, like the creator or the CEO of Parler or whatever was like, well, we did some hard thinking about it. It turns out it actually benefits us. And I'm like, yeah, no shit, because you'd get sued by everybody and their mother if it didn't exist. Like,
I think
obviously,
I think the doomsday scenarios about 230 have been overstated, but it's been very funny. Like, it's been funny to watch this whole thing play out on some level. It does remind me a little bit though of like net neutrality, and when like everyone was like, the internet's gonna be over when they get rid of net neutrality, and like, the internet's not over. I'd still keep net neutrality around, obviously. But I think
that the doomsday, the internet as we know it now, I think would be over much more so if 230 just went away and there was nothing to replace any of that language at all. If Trump got his wish and it disappeared tomorrow, so first of all, Trump would get sued a whole bunch. Twitter would get sued for the things Trump said and would basically have to not exist anymore, right? Because that's the thing, and that's the thing that people don't seem to understand. And then there's this fictitious, well, there's a difference between a publisher and a platform, and it's like, no, they're not in the way you think there is. There sure is not. But I think that if we lost Section 230, the internet as we understand it now, and certainly social media, would, if it didn't go away, it would be even worse than it is now. Just because your choices at that point are do not moderate at all, or like extremely, or do not moderate, or do not allow user content
at all
whatsoever, which just means the Nazis just take over everything because they're super good at being annoying and shitty and brigading and making themselves so loud that nobody wants to hang around anymore.
You've gotten to, you were talking about tribalism earlier when you're talking about like big problems in politics. I'll tell you, one of the ones that I see in a serious way is fringe political movements have really embraced brigading in a way that serious and more reasonable people, because they are more serious and more reasonable people, like, I will never get in touch with you and Cody and a handful of other people and be like, hey guys, let's go and drag someone tonight. I can't send up the Nove signal and we brigade, and even if I did that, you'd all be like, what has gotten into him? Part of the tribalism thing and part of like building a fringe tribe is about those shared collective action moments. And like Red Rose Twitter and like the Nazis and stuff have gotten really, really good at brigading and dragging people en masse in a concerted and focused way.
Yeah. And that kind of sucks, but it would suck worse if there was no Section 230, because they'd have run of the house, right? Like Twitter would be powerless to ban them basically without potentially incurring legal ramifications, or at least having to deal with the lawsuit, even if they ended up winning.
But also, like, Section 230 isn't going anywhere, is it?
Right. Well, right. No.
Yeah. No, I mean,
that's all posturing. That's all bullshit.
No. But it's certainly interesting stuff. But like, I guess as the Republicans are kind of moving out of the Trump era, what I see them having a hard time doing is decoupling themselves from Trump. I think that like
they shouldn't be allowed to. Fuck them.
I don't think his ex-presidency is going to allow for that. Like, I think other ex-presidents have been very studious and focused at like maybe, Bush and Obama will go and do the late night circuit in January of 2021 when they can finally like put their feet up and relax or whatever and have some fun for a moment, and then they fuck the fuck off, right?
Right.
I don't see Trump just like doing the one round of press and goodwill and then fucking the fuck off. I think
Oh,
he's
no,
going to
no,
try to
absolutely not.
launch this Newsmax network. I think he's going to be all over One American News Network. I think he's going to be calling into Fox. I think he's going to want to flex his relevancy in a number of these other different races.
Yeah, but the question is like, there was a tweet going around last night that was that he's talking about the Georgia runoffs at this rally, which is like, who has a rally? He's got a rally. He's the outgoing president. He's having rallies. It's the saddest fucking thing in the universe.
I think he's gonna run again.
But who? Like, he'll be, how old will he be? He'll be like 80.
He'll be Biden's age. That's exactly what they'll say. He's going to actually be a year younger than Biden when he starts the run.
Really?
And yeah,
I thought
he'll be
was
77. He's 73. He looks like he's 1,000. Like
right.
he's all stretched out like Silvio Berlusconi. But he is going to be a year younger than Biden. And I think a big part of the whole kayfabe of like, I was screwed, making sure that narrative really gets absorbed into the Republican DNA as he's leaving, is to make it like, this is the way that they restore the rightful king the next time around.
You would think the RNC would, like, well, I'm sorry, I'm gonna finish my original thought. The thing was going around, he's talking about the runoffs that are happening today, and like, everybody just looks bored while he's talking about these people who aren't him, because they're there for him. They don't give a shit about Ossoff and Loeffler in any meaningful way. Like, they don't care.
She's not good. I mean, and these other Republicans are not good at capturing the Trump energy.
Right. And I mean, I think that's what the thing is going to, like, when he's not relevant anymore, which is in 2 weeks, he's functionally not relevant anymore. Like, why those people, it's a cult of personality, and Trump is the personality. Like, these people are not, I was tweeting about it last night. Like, these people are not going to phone bank for Ted Cruz because they don't give a fuck about Ted Cruz. And I think it's bizarre that the Republican Party is like casting their, making their bones and destroying what little of their useless reputation remains to back, Trump's ridiculous, like, corrupt election narrative, when the people that are following the Trumpists are just that. They're Trumpists, and they do not give a shit about. These people did not care about politics before Trump, and they're not going to care about politics after Trump. I think a lot of them. I mean, the QAnon weirdos are going to stick around, certainly, because they're a bunch of weirdos.
For a while, so long as they have their people in Congress.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But like, I mean, one thing I'm looking at when we're talking about the high turnout election is, so Trump brings in all these new voters, and Democratic and left analysis has not been very keen on analyzing what it is that resulted in him actually picking up 7 million votes from the last time around. And I think you're on the money here, which is that like Trump himself is the draw, and that Trump specifically animates these people in a way that Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and old Cotton-eyed Tom are not going to be able.
Well, he's persona non grata now.
Yeah, no, right. Well, and that's the other thing too is, everyone has to be in service of Trump, right? Like there is no stepping away from Trump's narrative and bucking Trump's narrative. And this is the other reason why, like, I think if he runs again, he wins the nomination. All these other people are trying to bend the knee and kiss the ring and all that stuff, but Trump's a fickle god. When Trump decides that he's bored with you, or that you've displeased him in any way, shape, or form, or heaven forbid, you become a bit of a rock star, then he must cut you down. Right. He usually says he became a bit of a rock star before he does that.
Right. And so I mean, again, so like we were talking about earlier, I think there's like a non-zero chance that Trump, as unhealthy as he is, doesn't make it to 2024.
I think so. I agree with that.
But if you're the RNC, you would think, like, so first of all, their miscalculation in the hugest possible way in 2016 was when they went, well, it's definitely going to be Jeb. Jeb's our guy. So let's change all these early primaries to winner takes all so that we can crown Jeb and start like campaigning as a general, like when Florida's done, basically. Oops. So Trump wins, 34% of the vote in a primary, and
I
all of a
love that
sudden
this,
he's
like,
got all the reps go to him.
there was this
And
Maginot Wall that they built to stop Rand Paul after Ron Paul's 2012 run. And like they Rule 34. I don't know if you remember Rule 34 from back in the day.
like if it exists on the internet, there's pornography of it. That
I
rule
know, or maybe
34.
it was maybe I've got my dude like section two. Someone said section 230, and I had section like 302 mixed up with section 3. Like, you hear enough of these fucking acronyms over 10 years, they all start to blur. But it was
True.
whatever the rule was that Ron Paul and his team were trying to use to get delegates at the convention back in the day, in 2012. After that, the Republicans were very worried about a Ron Paul libertarian style insurgent campaign hijacking the Republican Party. And so they built the Maginot Wall that you're talking
Right.
about here, to try to make a smooth runway for Jeb. And what they ended up doing is making a unstoppable runway for Donald Trump to take off on.
So you would think that you would fix those things if you're the RNC. You would fix those things. Like, do you want the one-term president who lost Georgia for the first time since 1992, who lost Arizona for the first time since whatever, also maybe 1992? Like, that's the guy you want to run again?
And
Really?
Arizona is very much by his own hand. I mean,
100%.
I mean, if you look, he did everything he possibly could to fuck himself over in Arizona.
Yeah. And like next time it'll be Utah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sort
like
of fishing in the Grand Canyon, like actually going to the Grand Canyon, just be like, this is a hole, it sucks. Piss.
Yeah, I mean, he just. Why would you would think the like? So he just lost in a fairly historic fashion in terms of, they're of course they're gonna be like, well, he got the second most votes of anyone in a presidential election ever. It'd be like, yeah, but weird, who got the first most? By like several million more. You want to put that, you want to do that, you want a do-over of what just happened and expect a different result. And I just don't see how that goes your way. I don't know why the RNC would do that. If he's not fucking dead by then because he's in garbage shape and he's a septuagenarian.
So I think you're right, but like here's the sell to the RNC that I have to imagine would make any campaign strategist like bite their nails too. And it's this. It's that it is very likely that a different, more reasonable candidate, and I'm not even talking like a moderate centrist or anything like that. I'm talking like, I don't know, run John Thune. Not that they're not going to run John Thune, but like he's a generic, boring Republican, right?
Right.
John Thune, I think, would get, maybe 7 or 8 million less votes, but maybe finds a way to not cost, which at this point, the Democrat is now running away with 10 million more votes than the Republican. But
Right.
I still think, given the contours of the Electoral College map at this point, a boring Republican probably could win the Electoral College map like 279 to something or other. But I don't think the Republicans are going to be open to that. And I just don't see how you push away from Donald Trump, because if they couldn't do it now, and Trump has given them the golden opportunity. He is selling a bullshit narrative in 15 days. Yeah, 15 days. This narrative is not going to hold. And in 25 days, it's going to seem like ancient history. But the Republicans refuse to shove off their oar from Trump's shores even now at this late date.
I think because they think, a lot of them, I mean, again, it goes back to the tribalism thing, right? Like Ted Cruz thinks he'll never lose in Texas. And so the calculus is,
and I think they think they'll pay a price if they do push away from him.
Right, because he'll put a mean tweet about them out there, and then all the super Trumpists will turn their backs on him, just like they did to Tom Cotton, just like they did I mean, they've done it to they turned their back on Fox when Fox called the election for Trump.
And it means something when he turns his back on you. That's the other thing I kind of talk about here is like, it's not just like funny. It's not just like a petulant man who is bitter and is like a child who gets mad. Oh, well, you stink and I don't want to hang out with you. Like when he decides he hates your ass, it hurts your bottom line. Fox News is in trouble as a network right now because Trump has turned on them. They're now going to be, for the first time in 2 decades, an entire generation, really, fighting a ratings war with other news networks for their market share because Trump has turned against them.
Yeah, and I mean, what's interesting about that, of course, is that there are several reporters on Fox and had been for a long time who did not support Trump. I mean, I think it's widely speculated and very likely just true that like Shepard Smith got fired because he didn't toe the Trump line.
Absolutely.
The
they CNBC show's good, by the way.
I haven't watched it yet, but
no, it's good. It's a good watch.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the whole thing just baffles me. Everything about Trumpism is confusing to me, and every time I talk to someone who is a supporter of his, it confuses me more, especially if they're people who have been lifelong Republicans. And now I know it's not news to anybody that elections are not actually about policy. I mean, I don't want to shock anybody out there, and for people like you and I, they are, right? For wonky type people who are entrenched in politics and have
my closing argument was Fauci versus Atlas to people. like there's you may not think there's a qualitative difference between Biden and Trump. You're wrong, but there's obviously a qualitative difference between Fauci, the type of people that Biden's going to put into office, and Scott Atlas, the type of people that Trump's been using. But I'm with you.
But
policy.
It's not about the election itself. Is not about policy, and but it's still baffling to me when I talk to people that I've known since I was a kid. I grew up in a very conservative, suburb that ironically was actually a giant public works project. I grew up in one of the only 3 federal public housing projects in American history. The house I grew up in was built by the New Deal. It was a New Deal project, the house I grew up in. And that my parents still live in to this day. But it is a super, super white, for starters. Super conservative. Like when I go visit my parents now, there's signs in yards, not my parents' yard, but there are signs in yards that are like, "We back the badge, man." And I'm just like, fuck you. You don't even know, you people in this town don't even know what crime looks like. I got hassled for being out after curfew when I was 16 because I had purple hair. That's the kind of crime that happens in this town. The cops in this town could pull into the parking lot of the local Dunkin' and take a fucking nap and it wouldn't make one single difference because nothing happens in this town. So you're right that, well, we back the blue. Like, so what? Who fucking cares?
It really, that is really the Republicans in a deep way embracing statism and not even realizing that they're embracing statism. And that's at a deep level.
That's the thing, right? I talk to these people and they're like, yeah, man, Trump. And I'm like, what part of Trump to you, person I've known since I was a child who has been a Republican as long as I've known you and has talked about you're Republican because they're the party of limited government. They're the party of small government. They're the no nanny state, blah, blah, blah. What part of Trump's like, I'm a socialist, but just for white people rhetoric
and business. I'm a socialist for business.
Yeah, right. is that to you? Like what, well, he doesn't take shit from the mainstream media and a lot of that stuff is lies anyways and blah, blah. And it turns into this like, and I'm just like, these are people who I feel like are otherwise intelligent. And I'm like, look, historically, like I said, I've identified as libertarian for a long time. When I was in high school,
I've never been able to fully give up identifying myself in some way as like libertarian-ish or something, but like the movement has just gotten to, not everyone in it obviously, but like large, loud voices in the movement. Who's the ball? Stephen Molyneux. He's a really good example of like how fucking weird this movement has gotten.
He's not a fucking. Well, let's start with he's not a libertarian, but
he fancies himself as one.
Well, sure, right?
Yeah, right.
Fucking fascist. He's an ethno-nationalist.
Yeah, he's a
fascist.
white ethno-nationalist who's using libertarian as a stalking horse,
as a fig leaf.
Yeah,
for his shitty beliefs, and I, you know what, I understand that I have to reckon with that. And Julian Sanchez, who does great
I like
work,
him too.
Yeah, he's a Cato Institute guy, right?
Yeah.
Great work. He, you know, he at one point he had a really great Twitter thread that was like, I understand that there is a libertarian to fascist pipeline in this country, on the internet specifically, and like that's something we have to reckon with, but we can't just pretend it doesn't exist, right? Like we can't just say no, those people aren't real I mean, I just said Stefan Mono is not a libertarian, and I mean in the classical sense of like what those core beliefs generally have
Yeah,
been.
no,
He's
it's like
not.
when
But
people
when
use that
someone
word, yeah,
right,
right,
when they
yeah.
say they are that and people listen to them and then listen to the other shit they say, like we have to reckon with that in some way. But what I'm saying, I guess, is I fancied
Liberty
myself
is
that way
still an
for
important access for which you like calibrate how
right.
you feel about an
Yeah,
issue.
and it has been for a long time, which traditionally puts me more has historically put me more to the Republican side than the not Republican side. Um, and again, it's these people that I've known for my whole life, and I'm just like, what you talk about this individual liberty and these this oppression on individual liberties and all this stuff, and like Trump is not that guy. He's not. Ronald Reagan wasn't even really that guy. Like he postured like he was that guy. He wasn't that guy. But Donald Trump is less of that guy than Reagan was.
He just says religious liberty, but it's literally religious liberty for Christians.
For
Yeah,
Christians.
yeah, it's
And
not.
he's not even a Christian, which is
Yeah,
he's just pandering to the
he holds the
evangelicals.
Bible upside down.
Right.
The tagline is my second favorite book next to The Art of the Deal. Or no, I'm sorry, Art of the Deal is my second favorite book. He used to joke about the other way, then he flipped it around because he realized that was tasteless. Yeah.
Right. And it's just like I don't, and again, it goes back to that thing I was talking about earlier, which is tribalism. It's just like, well, he's the Republican. I'm like, well, that doesn't, you don't have to do that, right? You don't have to decide that I'm a Republican and he's a Republican, therefore I have to support him. You can just decide, like, there's a bunch of Republicans, prominent ones. Mitt Romney voted to fucking remove him from office. They're both Republicans. Like, you don't have to just decide I'm a Republican, therefore I support whatever Trump does. You don't have to do that. Like, somewhat famously in the Milwaukee area where I'm from originally, Charlie Sykes is also persona non grata now because he was a morning talk. He was the stalwart morning on the most listened to morning show in Milwaukee, AM radio every morning.
I remember
conservative guy.
Yeah.
And he started the Bulwark and started saying like Trump's a fucking idiot, basically. Or I mean, really, in those exact words. Now that he's not on over-the-air radio,
no,
I've he's persona non grata now for Republicans.
And initially, conservatives and Republicans and anti-Trump, because like there's anti-Trump, and then there are Trumpists. But then there are. I have a friend, a dear friend, a close friend of mine, who is anti-Trump. And
I have one of those too. And it makes me insane.
Yeah, no, I know. It's because it's this middle ground that doesn't fucking exist. And it's like the most, no, I know it's the most tedious position in the world. But my point to him is like, look, dude, you can wave off Steve Schmidt. So it's like you start Steve Schmidt and you go, this guy's kind of a little bit unhinged. He's kind of a political hackery guy. Okay. Well, he defected. It's just one guy. Defections happen all the time, sometimes political fortunes. Rick Wilson, I guess you could do that too. Okay, sure. Charlie Sykes, you start talking about that guy's resume. It seems like maybe something might be happening on your side that's indicative of something. Jonah Goldberg, the guy who wrote the book called Liberal Fascism, goes, no, this Trump shit, it's too much for me now. And you start stacking up more and more of these real rock-ribbed conservatives. David Frum. Who was pimping the Iraq War. Bill Kristol, Iraq War pimp. Like you start stacking all these people up, you can wave off one of them. You can go Steve Schmidt, blah blah blah. Bill Kristol, Iraq War salesman.
Who's that guy? Who's the guy who was a congressman? Walsh.
Yeah, Walsh.
Fucking. And it's at a point you go
Joe Walsh is a really good example because that guy was a dickhead.
Yeah, he fucking sucks. He still sucks. That these people do not get to rehab their images just because they also hate Trump.
But like the cleavage thing, the fact that like Trump's existence is so anathema to dudes who, if you want to say they suck, think about what that means then in terms of how much Donald Trump sucks.
Right. But that's the thing. That the cult of Trump immediately they're all rhinos. They're all, which of course the irony
and they
is
never
like,
believed. None of them ever truly believed.
the thing that's the irony about that is like someone on Twitter was like, oh, we don't, well, so of course people on social media assume every time I say something, I actually deactivated my Facebook account because I was tired of arguing with people.
Haven't been
but
on
like,
there in years.
yeah, but it got to the point where I would just say anything critical of Trump and they'd be like, oh, well, you know, better than Hillary. And I'm like, I voted for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton the exact same number of times, and it was 0, which is the exact same number of times I voted for Barack Obama. So if you think that you're going to get me by talking about how shitty the Democrats are, you're not. Like, that's not how this conversation is going to go. You can say whatever you want about how much Hillary Clinton sucks. Guess what? I think Hillary Clinton sucks too. I voted. I voted. In 2016,
it took Donald Trump to make me regret not voting for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Well, see,
I don't, because I lived in Virginia, and I mean I made the calculus. I was like,
I live in Texas, so I'm sort of throwing away my vote too. No, but like Donald Trump's presidency has been so bad that I wish I had actually registered and voted.
You know, I sat there and I went, okay, well, Hillary's up in the polls by like 15 points in Virginia. Doesn't matter what.
Yeah, I wrote to my friggin' father, and then I'll tell you what, my dad made me eat. Donald Trump made me hate my dad a little bit too. Where he was like, we're sitting around one night, and he's like, you know, you gotta love this guy, like about Trump. And I like looked at my dad. I was like, Dad, no, you actually don't. You actually don't. Yeah,
it's like that drill tweet. That drill tweet. You absolutely do not gotta hand it to him. Yeah. So. You know, and but the thing that gets me that and this is the thing that I haven't been able to let go about Trumpism is like these people, I believe what the kids say now is they simp for Trump. They simp for Trump harder than I have ever simped for any human being in my life, with the possible exception of my wife. Like, these fucking people are fanboys of a politician, and it is the saddest fucking thing I have ever seen in my life. I don't love my favorite band, my favorite filmmaker, my favorite game designer. I don't love any of those people the way these fucking weirdos love Donald Trump, and it is fucking foreign to me.
I want you to look, like, for those of you can't see this on the video podcast, I'm holding a Rickenbacker 330 and a Gibson SG, which are the two guitars that Fugazi used, like on the recordings. I bought this Rickenbacker 330
from Ian Mackay.
I wish. No, but I have a signed copy of 13 Songs by Brendan Canty. This PV has the only sticker. It's a Fugazi sticker that I got from circa the year 2000. Because they never actually printed stickers or anything.
Right, yeah, no merch.
It was a bootleg thing. I love this band. I will be deeply sad when any member of this band dies. I love them. I really do. They changed my fucking life. It's not even remotely close to the way I see people like love Donald Trump. And like the Trump tattoos and stuff. Right. Bernie was kind of close. Some people really like Bernie became a bit of a religion for people.
I thought that was weird too, though.
I didn't know. I thought that was weird. That actually turned. That's part of what turned me off from him. Is like these are politicians. Like, I supported Warren because I liked her on the policies. I didn't think she was a fucking saint. I don't think she's a fucking saint. Right. I don't like anyone who you can't say bad things about, to be completely honest.
Yeah, it makes you feel like they're hiding something. Right?
Well, okay, yeah. Well, if I can't say anything wrong with them, it makes me think they're hiding something. If I can see something wrong with them and I can't say it out loud, it makes me There's a couple of people in Congress right now who I think are bad actors that, like, it's scary to say bad things about. I did the Ilhan Omar episode, so I'll own that. But, like, yeah, you know, they're people who you're not allowed to say bad things about.
I mean, here's the thing. This is where I'm at. If tomorrow is Wednesday, if Wednesday morning I woke up and saw news making the rounds on like the music sites that, you know, 30 women accused Ian Mackay of raping them or groping them or whatever, I wouldn't suddenly be like, I wouldn't rush to Twitter to be like, I must defend Ian Mackay. I'd be like, well, that sucks, because that sure sounds like he did some shit he really shouldn't have fucking done. he's kind
Especially
of a
after
scumbag.
preaching the straight edge thing
Right.
for all the
Yeah.
I
You know what
know.
I mean? Like, I wouldn't suddenly do a bunch of mental gymnastics to be like, oh, well, Ian says he didn't, or he hasn't commented, so like clearly it's not true, and therefore, like, that's the thing that I just don't get. Like, there are no people in this world that I view through that lens, that anything that is any wrongdoing that they're accused of, they're not guilty of, or it doesn't matter, or it doesn't whatever. Like, the example I used recently, to use a concrete example of someone who actually did something, is like, I thought Bill Cosby was real funny for a long time, had stand-ups of his on DVD, had some of his books, and then like when like 20 women are like, he drugged and groped and or raped me, it's like, nah, man, like, that's, I can see where people so to be super clear, I advocate that we should believe women when they say things, but I can see when a group of people who like someone, if there's one allegation from one person and they're like, I don't know if I believe that,
Let's. I want more evidence. I don't. Especially
right,
on day one, I get going like, okay, this is one allegation. Let's see where things are going. It's day one.
Right, I get it.
Yeah.
20 fucking people are not making this. 20 people have the same fucking story and they're all making it up. Like, no. There, no fucking way. And of course, it's like, everybody, all of the people who defend Trump were fucking, they had their pitchforks raised way up in the air for fucking the guy who owned Miramax, Weinstein, right?
Oh, sure.
Fuck.
Well, same thing. That's
goddamn Hollywood deviants, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then, but it's like Trump's accused of basically the same shit.
Yeah,
for years.
I'll tell you. One time I tried to talk to somebody about that. My same anti-Trump friend. And I was like, well, what about the rape allegations? Like you take those seriously. There have been other rape allegations that this friend had been, like involving politicians or people like Al Franken and stuff. Where he was like, I gotta take it seriously. I was like, okay, great, fine. What about all of the allegations against Donald Trump? And I was like, I'm just going to give you the names. You tell me specifically, person by person, why you don't believe them. And because I need to see it for myself to just see how far this could fucking go. I went name by name and I got one sentence responses from this person. That's all this person gave me, each single person. Woman says she'd been raped by Donald Trump. One said, well, you can't believe that. Oh, well, it's just one thing. Oh, are you just going to believe that? Like, oh, that was 15, 20 years ago. Oh, how come this isn't that? Like, it was just one sentence bataways.
Right.
Like
no substantive rebuttals, right?
No. I mean, and that's sort of my whole point with like, in terms of understanding Trumpism and stuff, is like, they're 5 years into this sunk cost fallacy. Like, at this point, there's no talking them off of it, because like we have like a bigger problem. You were talking about problems big and small. Maybe that'll be the title of this show here. Tribalism's yours. Another big one for me is people don't fucking admit when they're wrong. Like people, like pundits,
people have completely lost the ability to genuflect.
They see no merit in admit that they're wrong. They don't know how to admit that they're wrong and be a big person about. I mean, so like publicly on this show, I was very wrong about a prediction in 2017 involving Donald Trump having to basically be brought to resignation like Nixon because of what he did with Comey. I was wrong about that, and I owned it, and I became I'll be honest, like that was a really good growth point for me. Because I got a lot more comfortable with like going like, okay, what was it about my priors that was so fucking wrong that I need to re-examine, rather than sitting there and trying to spin to people why I was actually right when I was fucking wrong.
Right. I mean,
but broadly speaking, the rest of politics is going in a direction of never admit when you were wrong. It's full speed ahead, no matter what. Plow through your bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it's always been for politicians, right? Like that's pretty fucking standard, generally speaking.
Sure.
But for the average citizen, like, and the thing I just want to say is like all these people like Donald Trump is a patriot and he's going to save America and blah 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 blah. And I just want to be like, he does not give a fuck about you. He does not give a fuck
about America as a concept.
A single fuck about you at all. If your guts were on fire, he wouldn't piss in your mouth to put them out. Like, he doesn't give a shit at all.
America as a
you.
concept to him is real estate.
Right.
It's territory. It's buying Greenland. It's not
Yeah, right.
it's
Right. I
not the
forgot. Oh God, I
Constitution.
forgot about that.
Yeah, it's buying Greenland. It's
So
not like the people, which is what I tend to think of. It's like all of us living together and figuring out a fucking way to do this. It's
right.
not our constitutional system. It's
No,
not concepts of like, liberty and like all that. It's none of that shit to him.
But
It's
to
real
them,
estate.
it's not really like that's part of what they've taken from him, right? It's not really that to them either. They posture like it is, but it's always funny to see like I'm trying to remember now what the thing. Oh, I mean, it was about this election thing, right? And it's like a bunch of these people are like, basically they're not saying this exactly, but they're basically saying like fuck federalism.
Yeah,
Federalism
no,
sucks.
and they're
And
definitely saying fuck the will of the people, right? Like
you know,
it starts at they're now saying fuck federalism, but it's like, well, obviously we didn't win the popular vote, and we make no contestation that we won the popular vote, so we obviously do not have a mandate from the people on this. But there are these weird technicalities in the rules, and we could use
it's not even
everything.
that. It's beyond that. It's beyond there's these weird technicalities in the rules, and we want the federal government to override the states
Yeah.
to deal with what we perceive as these weird technicalities, which in fact are really not like the things that they talk about being there and the technicalities. Well, the Constitution says that. Like I saw one the other day that was like, it says in the Constitution that Pence counts the votes, and I'm like, you should probably read the fucking Constitution again, because it actually
The idea that
does
the
not
vice
say
president
that.
is this secret trapdoor, super special like trump card thing that you can play.
Right.
They clearly didn't think of him as
like
that.
literally it says that he opens the sealed envelopes and the votes are counted, and that's all it says, and that wasn't clear enough. So when we passed the what is it, the Electoral Count Act of 1876,
Yeah, after the
they
Tilden
said
Hayes election,
right after the Tilden Hayes clusterfuck, they said,
which
okay,
they said affirmatively,
there are counters here, observers or counters. I don't remember what they're named in that particular statute, but like they count the votes. Like Pence, it doesn't say in the Constitution that he counts the votes. And what it does say in the Constitution is non-specific enough. There's a separate federal statute pursuant to the 12th Amendment that explains exactly what happens because of the Tilden Hayes clusterfuck. And like but it's just like I want to ask these people sometimes. I see this stuff flip through my Twitter feed, and I read they're in Twitter jail right now, which is a bummer, but there's a coping MAGA Twitter account.
Oh my god, that counts great. Yeah. No, it's a hoot it's a hoot, but it's also like instructive at really kind of getting you into the brain of like how deep this shit is going.
But I just want to be like, I see all that stuff like Donald Trump is defending the Constitution and I love the Constitution and the Constitution is so important. And I'm like, what do you think the Constitution says? Like when you say that, weird person on the internet who believes that a random anonymous message board troll is a deep state operative who can see the future. What do you think that means? Like, what is that? When you say you love the Constitution,
what about
explain it to me? Like, because I don't get it. It feels like you just say it because it's the thing you're supposed to say, because people talk about what makes us unique is our specific, unique American Constitution. And I'm not necessarily arguing that.
Like they can fucking compare and contrast it to any other country's system like, give me a comparison of American constitutionalism compared to the French state.
Right. Or like how explain why our Constitution is better than the Magna Carta, right? Like what, but that's the thing. Like I want to know, like when you say that, what does that mean? Like what part of it? I mean, I know you all love the Second Amendment because you talk about it all the fucking time. You claim to love the First Amendment, but then you also want to force private companies to carry other people's speech,
and you're upset about cancel culture, which is your way of sort of saying I'm upset when other people are using free speech and telling me I suck.
Right. Like I remember when that letter came out, the big Vanity Fair, I think it was.
Yes.
And it was like, there are people who I feel like should have known better, who are like, oh, they're standing up, they're just standing up for free speech. And I'm like, no, they're standing up to not get dunked on Twitter.
Yeah. It's
like,
the
they're
very
mad-
opposite of free speech.
They're mad
Yeah.
they're getting dunked on Twitter by a million randos, and they don't want to have to deal with that. So and I think
How dare the public tell me I suck?
right. And like Ken White had the I don't know, are you familiar with
Pope Hat.
He also does great podcast that's been going on for the last few years from NPR in Los Angeles.
Yes,
All the President's Lawyers.
All the President's Lawyers. It's very good.
Very good show. But he had the best take on that, I thought, which is, again, basically just like all these people, like there's an a priori presumption that people who are dunking on you on Twitter should not have the freedom of speech that you're talking about under the mask of civility, because you don't want, like, because when J.K. Rowling says a shitty thing about trans people, she doesn't want to be like dunked on by a bunch of people on Twitter for it. And that's like
manners police
too fucking bad. Like,
it's used as a way of kind of curtailing free speech without having to say free speech, or it's like, well, that's not nice. And it's a way of avoiding actually, like, well, okay, you don't like the sentence being said at you, but like you're just upset that someone's challenging you.
But that's also that's another fig leaf that the Trumpists love, right? Like, he's never expected to be civil in any measure of discourse or reasonable or anything. But when was it one of Biden's campaign managers or something said, like, fuck them,
like, these fuckers,
these fuckers,
these fuckers, and it was beyond. Hillary Clinton called us a deplorable.
I cannot believe that they would stoop to such a level as to call me a fucker. Like, eat shit, motherfucker. You're fucking dude. Like, his entire vocabulary is talking shit about people who disagree with him. That's his whole raison d'etre is being shitty online and offline. So like, you don't get to suddenly be like, oh, but now well, facts don't care about your feelings, lib. And it's like, okay, but they care about yours apparently, because all you talk about all the time is how you fucking feel. But it's different for you.
Joe, I gotta get running here. I've actually got somebody at my front door here. Can I get your plugs real quickly here, and I will edit in the tail end of the episode. Where can people find you on Twitter, man?
You can find me on Twitter at shake_well. It's probably by volume. It's more like video games and wrestling chatter than anything else, but I definitely take time to dunk on Trumpist idiots from time to time. So, and then you should, if you like old video games, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/onthe-stick.
All right, Joe, we got to get you back on the show here sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, you can find me at DWATG. Easy place to find the show, patreon.com/DWATG. Go to don'tworry.tv. That is our homepage, and we will get at you very, very soon. I will talk to you all very soon. Bye-bye. Hey, Joe, I got to run right now. I got to answer the door.
Let me know if you need this recording.
I will. All right, talk soon.
Talk.